War. For generations, our people have warred. I was 18 when they sent me to the front. By the time this story begins, I was 24. The Gloucester was nothing new to me. To the generals, it was everything. The treasury, this peninsula, was our foothold in taking back our land. And to the general's dismay, the treasury was under siege and rapidly falling. I was sent as a support unit to Gloucester, but months prior I was serving in Callahan's Passage as a backlines doctor. I had hoped they'd never send me to the front lines again, yet here I was. I was afraid again.
What the fuck? I'm alive. Oh my god.
Afraid that in a moment's notice, that at any time I wasn't alert, or even if I was just unlucky, I'd be dead. But worst of all, afraid of what I was here to do. You see, being a frontline medic is worse than you think.
With you.
People's lives depend on you. They depend on you to pick up their guts and shove it back into them while a hailstorm of bullets soar overhead. And they scream, cry for mama, and they look at you and beg to be taken home.
Alright, one goal. Ooh, good throw.
Nice
God
grenade!
damn! Good throw.
His ass just popped off, man.
We got 3 to the southwest, 2 pushing.
As a medic, it wasn't the collie footmen that scared me. It was the mortars, the tanks, because you can't patch up a bloodstain left in a crater.
Tank.
About an hour in, I saw my first victim. He was a man just older than me, a man who likely spent his years climbing the ranks. It was funny. He wasn't gripping his wounds. He was shielding his warrant officer patch from the mud.
Fuck.
In that very same ditch, I thought I was going to die too. That's one of the things they don't tell you about war back home. That even when you're pinned down, you start to pray. That even atheists turn to God. That's when I saw it. A giant machine gun on the other side. It was now or never, and I didn't want to die lying down. Sometimes you're lucky in war, and sometimes you have to seize opportunities when you see it.
2 tanks to the south. 2 tanks to the south.
Two head on chin!
There was only one tank in truth, but I knew the generals needed the treasury, and so like I thought, they sent in the armored division. But even with all our power on our side, it still all came down to our old friend, Lady Luck.
Ooh, unlucky.
Fuck. I'm getting shelled.
Get in the bench, boys.
Hey, Corporal. Trent, come on.
How many get it?
Stay here. I got some healing. Oh, we're here getting shelled.
That is not nice.
Retreat a little.
We should be fine as long as we're down here. Unless we get really lucky.
And that's when I met them. Warrant Officer Phoenix, Staff Sergeant Jay Long, Lance Corporal Magical. These would be my first
Heading
friends
back
in
a bit.
Gloucester.
Come back if you need healing.
I noticed as the day crept by, I was the only medic for miles.
Another medic, finally.
Thanks, bro.
No wonder the generals had resorted to sending backline doctors ahead.
God bless.
Alright. Thank you.
A sentiment started to become common among the soldiers of the Gloucester.
This place has been destroyed.
And they were right. Whatever the treasury was, it didn't matter. All it was now was mud and corpses.
Push, push, push.
But to the generals, it was a position that mattered.
He did.
It would make or break the North. I wasn't trained in machine guns, honestly, but for a moment I picked one up, as we were making way forward. Then, we heard it. A colonial crying out as he died.
It hurts. It hurts, man.
For a second, all we did was lock eyes with the enemy. I fired first.
To the southwest.
Maybe if I hadn't, we could have laid down arms and talked about peace.
Including half-track.
But we both knew that wasn't going to happen.
That's not good. Also, there's no ammo here. I do have a poison grenade I could probably throw at it.
You said half track coming our way?
That's what I heard.
Shit. Oh, they're shelling, they're shelling.
A half-track was something of ingenious design. You take a truck, put tank treads and a turret on it, and all of a sudden everyone you look at is shredded cheese. If I'm being honest, half-tracks scared the shit out of me. But in the same vein, I knew this squad needed me. We shouldn't, and couldn't, have a successful defense without us.
If anyone needs healing, I'm back here.
Just dunked up.
The shelling's getting closer, careful.
There's a medic in the back.
Among the men with me was Sergeant Oltani,
But it's
Sergeant
heavily
Scoopity,
damaged.
Corporal Facid, Lance Corporal Anthony,
Right.
and Corporal Cat, who even though I said last was certainly above Anthony in rank, although you wouldn't know it by how he acted. But in his lax demeanor, he knew we were digging ourselves into a hole.
To the southwest.
If it wasn't for him, I may not be telling you this story.
I'm gonna go tell the tank.
I was speechless. Just as Cat had left, our line faltered and started to crumble. What had been a whole squad turned into 3 men with machine guns, 1 man pinned down far ahead of us, and a medic whose heart was racing too fast for his own good. I threw myself over the mound and ran for one of the grave-sized holes a soldier had dug, likely hoping he had gotten the exact measurements for his body right. As reinforcements came, we pushed further, in our blind stupidity, wedging ourselves between the enemy tank and their half-track. But luckily, as I scored corpses, I found in the mud an RPG. I did a double take. It was our lucky day. If I could just land the shot on the half-track, then the platoon could consolidate our forces on the tank's side. As I ran over to Sergeant Webber, we soon found ourselves crouched behind the same crater, hiding from the half-track and cut off from the rest of the men. Thankfully though, it seemed even getting a glimpse of the RPG drove them away. At least I thought, until the tank arrived over the hill. I knew this was my chance. If I just hit it right, I'd save so many from dying. And I whiffed. But as I mentioned earlier, Corporal Cat's foresight had saved my life.
Thank you.
Thank you! I'm with you, Sergeant. I said to Sergeant Who.
I'm with you, Staff Sergeant.
It was something that made the men feel safer, knowing that they had a medic with them. Or anyone with them, for that matter. That was close. Alright, men. Let's do this. Let's hold this
Let's try to
line.
cover some machine gun.
Anybody know how to build a fucking this thing?
Hit it with
What?
a hammer? That's all I
What do you
know.
want?
Yeah, that's basically all I know as well.
Do you want to go or what?
We wanna
The base. I guess we need a CV for that. Construction.
Spin down.
Shit, yeah.
Spin down over there.
Okay, let's go.
Throw the grenade in my front door.
Night had finally come, but the siege didn't let up. I threw myself into the dirt, hoping that for a moment the collies would think I'm dead, so I could run back to the trench. Several bullets hit me, thankfully leaving my body as fast as they had came.
Det går inte så bra, jag blir skjuten.
As the 22nd of December turned to the 23rd, I found myself knee-deep in the corpses of my comrades. While I had desperately tried to bring a man back to life, who was clearly too pale even for a warden, the collies had flanked us and forced us away from their trenches. Bring him here. Our squad had been hit badly, but by Callahan's grace, I made quick work of my comrades' injuries.
I'm bleeding too.
You're gonna make it, don't worry. For once tonight, I had felt like I wasn't a complete failure. Don't worry, stand right. Until Stan Recht was shot out from my arms as I had picked him up. Oh no! It's over. Thank you. I must have been hit somewhere important, since the next thing I remembered was Sergeant Limax dragging my body through our base.
Coming towards the artillery might not be a wise move here.
I'm the one medic in the entire battle. Oh,
Maybe I should get some medical gear.
While he himself bled out. It was then I realized how dire the situation was in the treasury. This wasn't some possibly winnable battle. There were no medics, they're running out of supplies, and all the men here were just mere grunts. Thank you. We got this, medic brother. It looked like the officers had quietly retreated from the claustrum.
Okay, give me a...
And that, good man, brings us to now.
You boy.
I had healed from my injuries earlier that night,
Let's
and realizing the situation, I wanted to get back to the front to prevent as many deaths as I could.
Let's go. Getting two most important people on the front line. Hell yeah.
Whoa!
Let's do it.
There's lots of dudes ahead. Be aware.
Medic here.
Oh,
Oh, sick fucking, that was awesome. That was cool as fuck. That was sick.
We just did a
Medics
180.
here, medics here, boys.
Yeah, I need some medic. Medic.
No, don't want to fucking die.
Who's a medic?
Watch out, watch out.
Over here. Look at it. Thank you. Ta till och köpa min skolklass.
Oh yeah,
I got the best medicine, right? Just sit down and let me just pull that in your body.
Immediately I realized what was happening. This was the final push. This was going to be the fall of the treasury. I had to help my squad. No, my brothers, as much as I could. I felt invigorated like never before. I felt as if God was placing his hands on my shoulders. And that's when I saw it. I've never seen that in my life. Run, run. Run. Sent to the angel, strike us down. They've sent to the angel to strike us down. For war is bad, war is evil. Regardless of
both sides. God frowns upon us. But men, do not fret. We fight. We hold the line. We survive. For we are warriors.
More is fucking cool, man.
Oh, what? You're just the rude ass. Oh, there's machine gun! Grenade!
That's bad.
May God have mercy on our souls.
I was wandering what remained of the front, looking for any soldiers to tell to retreat. There wasn't many left, still holding the treasury.
There's men directly up ahead. Heal me up. Thank you, Scotty. Oh my God, medic brothers! Finally, we've made it to the front.
Guys,
got
guy
this.
back, guy. Behind you, behind
Yeah, that guy. That guy's fucked.
Yeah, that guy's fucked. Though we get it. We should push back. They're pushing on us here.
It seemed a few more medics, finally, were sent to the front,
Oh.
probably to help slow down the advancing Colonial Legion,
Alter, das sind irgendwie um die 50 hier nach vorne.
while the remaining officers' staff finished removing themselves from the region. I think most of the soldiers had realized this was our final stand at this point in the morning.
Another angel sent to strike us down. But do not fret, boys. We fight. We live to see another day.
Which was a lie for most of us,
The light shines upon us. We smile through it.
but I took it upon myself to inspire the remaining soldiers here.
Do not worry, my son. God is here. He gives you life.
Maybe I didn't want them to be scared facing death.
Fight. Fight, Corporal.
And maybe I didn't want to be scared either.
Hold the line, men. Grenade! Machine gun into the west.
Just dropped a bandage. Dropped a bandage right here. That blue.
You're living today, don't worry. Another angel has appeared.
There's enemies.
Grenades, 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 grenades!
In honest truth, I'm glad these were the men that I was dying with. They were my brothers, and even though I had only been here 2 days,
Put that man down, put that man down. I got him.
I've never bonded with anyone else like this before.
Don't worry, Private. God is with you.
This was my lot as a medic, to protect, to save those that needed it.
How do you heal? Like, do you need the medikit? The medikit can heal.
Yeah. Just learn the ways of medicine.
And I'm glad I spent these 6 years serving.
Oh, I must learn the way of killing another man.
Fight, men. Hold the line. Major General, I salute you. Let's begin.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course, what is that?
Don't worry, General, I got you.
I will touch.
Push. Follow the General's orders. The General is with us. Don't worry, boys. God smiles upon us today.
Can go straight to left.
We won't expect this flank. Take him down. Good shot, Sergeant. Hey. They just killed their own. Disgusting. Oh, God.
Okay, so what I really like about this clip is it looks like the guy is like crouching,
You're not in the open.
and I didn't realize
Come on,
in
get
the
behind-
bottom left
get behind
corner
some
it's
cover.
like, oh, pick up wounded soldier. So I was just like, why isn't he moving? You can even hear somebody in like the background go like, ah, fuck, the medic's dead.
What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to make like this.
Okay, so this one is like a twofer.
Video.
What happened is I see like, oh, this guy's like knocked down over in this hole,
Don't worry, I got you.
but I didn't realize you couldn't like walk over the mounds at the time. So I just kept on walking into like the side, and the guy is like, "Stop! What are you doing? What are you doing?" But eventually gets us like all killed. And the best part about this is that the guy that kills us is like surprised that he was able to.
Oh shit.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Bleed.
But the second half of this is that Webba trying to kill the enemy collie, he kills us all accidentally.
No, I'm sorry.
And then when I return, he's like really apologetic, and it's like really nice, but I didn't realize he was
Massive
apologizing
darkness.
for killing
That's
us. So I was just like, okay.
We'll get bunched up, guys.
No, Ham. Sorry, Ham. Be bad for you.
It's okay.
And then what's
Right.
fucked up, but funny, is that at the very end of
They
the
just
video,
killed
as you
their
guys saw,
Disgusting.
one of the collies accidentally killed their own, and I say to Webba, disgusting, they just killed their own.